How's it going, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Peterson. This is the place where you can learn how to master your health, your wealth, and your love all in one place. So I hope you look forward to another great episode with another great guest. Before we get started, I do want to remind everybody that the best way to support the show is to simply subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends. Also, if you want to get more involved with the show, check out our website at pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you have your pen and paper ready to take some notes on some great wisdom coming your way. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side of the episode. And we are live. Today we have Neil Butler with us. Neil is a small business owner and podcaster down in Australia, just outside of Melbourne in Geelong. I think I'm pronouncing that right this time.
You've got that well done, yes.
Neil, thank you very much for hopping on the show today. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks, Gabe, and thanks for having me. And sorry about the time zone thing. We're about 17 hours ahead of you, so it's a weird time for you, and it's a weird time for me.
Hey, man, that's how the world works. It's a big globe, and somebody's got to be on the other side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different day even. It's not even the same day where I am.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You're in front of us, aren't you? You're in the future.
We are indeed. It's tomorrow.
You got to tell me what the stocks are doing. To get us started, why don't you tell everybody, who you are, what you do, and how you got started down that path in the first place?
Sure. Well, I started off my working life as a school teacher and did that for 5 years, and then moved on into a range of different business roles. About 10 or 11 years ago, in fact, probably 15 years ago, I was invited to find myself something else to do, which is a nice way of saying be made redundant. And I started doing some contract work. I launched a brand which is subtly sitting in the background, Untypical, because the way I tend to approach things, certainly from a corporate perspective, is a bit untypical. And that sort of got me into a range of different activities. I stumbled into what we call in Australia community radio. Community radio is kind of amateur radio, but it broadcasts on your FM dial. So we not compete, that's not the right word. We are up against commercial stations, and did that for a few years, and then found that podcasting was actually a bit of fun, because at the end of the day, my podcast journey started off by just being recordings of interviews I'd done on radio programs. And then from there, I thought, well, the problem with radio is it happens at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, or it happens at whatever time on a Sunday afternoon. Podcasting, I can do 10 episodes in a row right now and just dribble them out. So it's a more convenient way of tackling it. It also means that guests who aren't available, you can be a bit be flexible and do it tomorrow in your timeline, that sort of stuff. So that's how I got started. Never met a microphone I don't like. And we're still in some pretty serious shutdown mode down here at the moment with Corona the way it is. And so I can do everything literally sitting in this chair. I can run my business. I can do my podcasting. I can run an online radio station. So there's a few things I can do just sitting in the same place, which is great.
Awesome. I love it. So your job, so today you're a master podcaster. In fact, you've master podcaster. That's funny. It rhymes.
Podcaster master.
Podcaster master. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 4 or 5 podcasts? It's
7.
It's 7. It's not even either of those. You have 7 podcasts that you are tearing it up today. So you are definitely a podcaster master. But it wasn't always that way. You got started as a teacher, it sounds like 15 years ago, at which point you got made redundant, aka you lost your job. You love those pretty words that people put on those kind of things. And then, you didn't quite know what to do. You started Untypical, it sounds like, and got into radio hosting, which brought you to today, which is podcasting. Yeah. So a lot of the people that listen and watch this show, Pursuing Greatness, it's all about living a great life and how to do it better, how to do the 3 main aspects of your life, which is your business, your health, and your relationships better. And so you are business master. This is the reason you're here today. One of the main things when it comes to business for people who want to launch a business and grow a business is getting the word out there. And in my opinion, podcasting is one of the best ways to do that, especially if you're doing it on a shoestring. I got started doing this. I guess I put a little bit of money into it, but I didn't have to. You could get started with very little money down. So kind of take us on your podcast journey, and what kind of, why did you decide to start the podcast? I know you already went into that a little bit, but kind of take us from the beginning to the end, and give us some of the good lessons that you learned along the way.
I'm always intrigued by gadgets. That's so, oh, there's a shiny thing, I'll have one of those. And so podcasting landed in my life, I reckon probably 5 years ago, thereabouts, off the back of the radio stuff. Initially, I did it using a really cheap microphone and a really cheap audio interface and some free software. So invariably, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're doing it on the cheap, it's going to sound a little bit ordinary. So it was probably, I sort of played around the edges with a couple of podcasts, did them for 5 or 6 episodes, and stopped and went back and had a look at it. And the distillation, there's an impressive word, that came out of that was, the important thing was about gaining the wisdom of people who were my guests. That was the common thread. It didn't matter what it was I was talking about. So, for example, a couple of the podcasts that you don't realize I'm doing, I'm actually doing for external organizations. So I'm effectively hosting on behalf of a third party.
Okay.
Now, I know nothing about the topics that I'm presenting, but being able to draw out the wisdom from people has been, I guess, the key thing, which is why he said, pointing over his shoulder to the big orange thing on the wall, where WowPod came from. WowPod is, I guess, my flagship podcast. Wow stands for Words of Wisdom. So it's the Words of Wisdom podcast. So WowPod, 50 odd episodes now, and that's just chatting to people. Brackets, I think Gabe might be on there at some stage very soon, folks. So look out for that. Because if he thinks I'm doing this for nothing, he's got nothing coming.
True businessman.
WowPod, very similar concept to what you're talking about here, only slightly extended. But we don't necessarily talk about businesses or anything. It's what are the 5 things you've learned about in your life. Now that could be, don't run upstairs carrying a pair of scissors, or it could be, to quote Monty Python, always look on the bright side of life, or it could be something your mum taught you. It could be anything, but we tend to use those as the hooks for the conversation, and the conversation goes off in all directions. It's just a really bad excuse for a chat more than anything else. So, and then we have some fast facts at the end, the 15 fantastic fast facts. And so very similar concept to what you're doing, but away from any particular topic. So one person, the interview that I did yesterday, or that published yesterday, was with the captain of the last AFL premiership team for Geelong. Geelong, where I live, has its own AFL team, AFL being the Australian Football League, our footy, the Aussie rules. So he chatted a lot about sport. Another one we had was an amateur musician. We talked a lot about music and what music meant to people. So it's about drawing the wisdom out of people's experiences, because everyone's got it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love doing this, is I get to be the receiver of all the wisdom of people like you yourself. So, I mean, I do love podcasts that way. And I also know that they are great tools to grow businesses. I have another podcast for real estate, which is my primary business. Have you done any consulting or worked with other businesses to help launch podcasts at all? Or are you primarily focused on, growing the user base for your own?
So at the end of the day, I guess I do podcasting because I love doing podcasting. And I love the opportunity, as you indicated. So I honestly don't care if 1 person listens or 1 million listen in that respect for the podcasts like WowPod and 1 or 2 others that I've got. I have started the 2 that I just mentioned before for the third parties. That's helping other people start. And in fact, watch this for a shameless plug. This morning, I purchased the domain name yourpodcast.com.au. So I'm going to go out to businesses in Australia and say, we'll do your podcast for you.
I like it.
And so it's about, I've just had a global launch of a brand without knowing.
You saw it here first, folks.
Yeah, I'll send you some royalties. But the idea is that, get rid of newsletters. Newsletters are crazy. People don't read newsletters anymore. Change it into a podcast, because instead of me saying, well, then Gabe said this, and then Gabe said that, and Gabe thought this, I can say, Gabe, what do you want to say about it? So it becomes alive. So that's a direction I really want to take with podcasting. And I can't believe that since podcasting started 15, 16, 17 years ago, that more businesses don't do it.
Absolutely.
It's just nuts, to use a technical expression.
And it is, I mean, newsletters, they're not necessarily obsolete. I still think that people do like reading, email newsletters, etc. But I do think that podcasts are such a more dynamic and easier way to create a newsletter. And a lot of businesses, when they think about podcasting, they think, oh, it's, this huge production. I got to get a studio and blah, 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 blah. But really, you don't. I mean, you just need a mic. Especially if you're a business, the easiest way to go about doing it is just have somebody ask questions and have somebody else, maybe in sales, maybe in product development, even the owner, just answer questions about the business and about what's happening in the current day. And again, you don't have to launch. I do this 3 times a week. You don't have to do that. You can do 1 a month even, and it still is super effective for people who are following you.
Well, the couple that I'm doing for other organisations, one's called the Irrigated Cropping Council of Australia. And, and I know nothing about irrigating crops, but I do now. I know all about going out and counting your tillers. The other one is a thing called Regional Leadership Australia, and that's a group of businesses or not-for-profits, I think, that run leadership programs for people who live outside of the metro areas of Melbourne, of Australia. And that's, I literally know nothing about the programs, but it's about, I guess, the interviewing skills that I've developed on radio over the journey. The other thing I've got sitting on my desk that you can't see is a thing called a Rodecaster Pro, and it's a 4 microphone channel mixing desk made by an Australian company. I got to drop into the conversation, Rode, R-O-D-E, but it's got a USB interface, a Bluetooth interface, and a TRRS interface, which means I can plug my phone into that desk and have a conversation with anywhere literally in the world, either through the USB using a browser-based thing like Zoom, or using a telephone inside Australia on the national mobile network. And it's as though they're sitting on the other side of the desk. So I could do a newsletter for a company that's on diagonally across Australia using the phone, and everyone would think they're sitting in the same office with me. It's just brilliant.
That's actually really cool. I've never heard of that. What'd you call it? It was Rode or
Rode, R-O-D-E is the brand, and it's called the Rodecaster Pro.
Rodecaster Pro. Jotting that
They were
down.
about $500 or $600 US. We pay about 800 Australian down here. We love Rode because Rode's an Aussie company.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the owner of Rode
Pro for people who are thinking about creating a podcast, that doesn't. It's not necessarily, you don't need it, but it sounds like a useful tool. I might pick it up myself.
Yeah, and the microphones that I'm using are Rode. I'm not getting paid anything by Rode, by the way, but they're also
Tell the
Rode,
truth.
and they're designed to interface with this particular machine. They interface with other machines as well, but it's all just hangs together. And Mr. Rode, whoever he was, the man who owns Rode, just bought Kurt Cobain's guitar for US $6 million. So he's obviously doing well with his equipment.
That's funny. All right, so we can geek out on tech gear for a while. I'm gonna turn us around real quick.
Yeah,
I love it. But that is one of the beauties of podcasting. Once you get into it, you really get into it, and you start talking about things like microphones. I never liked microphones before this, but now I have knowledge. Okay, going back to podcasting though, people listening, watching, they're thinking about making a business. Maybe they already have a business, they want to grow it. So we already mentioned that they could create a podcast as a newsletter, or they could create it just as a way to start drumming up business. When creating the podcast structure, how you need to have a structure for your podcast. How do you go about suggesting people create their structure? That is the best way that I can think of it. The theme that they're using for their podcast.
A lot of people watch a lot of television shows over the journey. So think about a TV show. Every TV show has a start, a middle, and an end, and that's what your podcast needs. Now, you've used an obvious one, that is, so tell us a bit about yourself. And that's the best intro ever, because you don't have to do any work on it at all. And the person who's your guest, it's their specialist area. If they're on the television program Mastermind,
I know everything about me.
Your specialist subject tonight is you. Works. So that's good. The ending bit I use on mine, I use some fast facts. So tell us your favorite place to buy a coffee, favorite song, favorite CD, favorite whatever, because that's just a really nice way to pull it together. The bit in the middle is the bit that people need to give some serious thought to. And I do a program, a 1 hour session called Start Your Own Podcast. And in that, I talk about the content. Equipment and how you host it and all that kind of stuff is relatively unimportant. If you tell me that you're going to do a podcast once a month, I want to know what the first 6 episodes are going to be about. Because it's like a newsletter. With a newsletter, how often have you been involved in an organization when they do a newsletter? The first one's brilliant. The second one is not so bad. The third one, it's now out to 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks. The fourth one, we're getting really desperate. We're asking Gabe to give us a pizza review. And then by the episode 5, it's gone. Well, it's a bit the same with podcasts. That bit in the middle is where the important part is. So if you're going to do real estate, for example, make sure that you've got something that says, okay, we're going to do property of the month, or something like that you can come back to each time. If you're talking about guests and you think, I know 3 really big names in the sports industry, well, that's great for the first 3 episodes. What are you going to do for episode 4? So you really need almost like a running, and if you're doing it once a week, then the pressure's right on you, because then you've got to turn around much, much quicker.
Absolutely. So beginning, middle, and end. I like that. The beginning, and you're absolutely right. The beginning and the end are, it's the easy part. I mean, for me, especially because I'm interviewing guests, I pass the baton off to my guests and I say, hey, tell me about yourself. But if somebody wanted to create their own podcast, you could just create a hook for the beginning, something that, some prescribed topic that you always ask the guest or that you always talk about, maybe on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it may be. And the end could be, quick questions or quick facts or whatever it is that you want to talk about, to close it. The middle part definitely is the hard part, and that's what you really need to plan out before, a couple months in advance, so you have this content already prepared. I mean, you know what you're going to be doing. You're not just like blabbing into a mic for 30 minutes.
Because I think if you look at the regional podcast, for example, I asked them to tell me 5 fast facts about where they live, because we're learning something about their area. It's really simple to come up with that bit. The bit in the middle, that's the bit also that you can stretch. You can do 5 minutes or you can do 50 minutes, depending upon what it is you're trying to cover. I do my own podcast called Untypical Thoughts, he said, putting another shameless plug in. And Untypical Thoughts is just me talking about things relating to business. And I don't make them any longer than 5 minutes. So my start, middle, and end there is, the start says, hi, welcome to Untypical Thoughts. My name's Neil Butler. Today we're going to talk about bang. And at the end I say, so that's all we've got time for today. If you want to subscribe, you can go to untypicalthoughts.com.au and away you go. We'll see you next time. So it doesn't need to be anything terribly amazing. I always read that bit, but I don't read the bit in the middle.
Awesome. I love it. And I actually, I record that. And so it just kind of, it's the same thing on everyone. It's probably the lazy way to do it, but I also do it.
That is if you happen to have a sore throat, people go, you're talking like this, and all of a sudden you're down here. So I always do it in one go, just so that the voice is consistent.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. So, oh man, time does fly. So we do try to keep these around 20, 30 minutes. So I'm going to move us on just a little bit here. You've talked a lot about podcasting and about how people can get started in podcasting. So I want to, this is about, how to live a better life and how to really go forward in life, in business, in health, and in your relationship. So I'm going to switch to you, Neil Butler. You've had many years in life. You've had a lot of opportunity to experience life and learn from it. So if you could go to the Neil who was, just getting out of elementary school or whatever the equivalent is over there down under, and give him one piece of advice going forward, what would that piece of advice be?
Can I use an Australian term? It does 2 things. It brings in a cultural element as well. Have a crack.
Have a crack. Okay.
Have a crack. Have a crack means have a go. Try.
I like it.
Yeah. So have a crack at something means to give it a go. Make mistakes. Don't sit back and go, but it might go bad. Yeah, it might go bad. It might go well. That's the other thing. And it's very much an Australian thing to say, oh, go and have a crack. So I know it has connotations elsewhere, but that's what we tend to use over here. And it's a piece of advice I've used with so many people over there. They'll say, oh, do you think I should? Yep. If the word should comes in, do you think I should? Yeah. That's usually a good starting point.
Absolutely. And those words have been echoed across multiple episodes on this podcast. Just do it, people. If you think if you have the desire to do something, And there is good in that thing that you're doing. Just do it. Don't hesitate. Every time you hesitate, every second that you spend hesitating is another second that you've lost doing it, and it's another second that most likely is going to turn you away from the thing itself. So just do it when have a crack at it, as the Australians say, and just move forward.
Jim Morrison of the Doors in 1968 said, "The time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try it. You can only lose."
I like it.
There's some really wise words in amongst some of the great rock and roll songs of the 60s and 70s if you go looking for them.
I could imagine. I'm not very versed in it, but there are some good songs out there that I love. Yeah. All right, moving on. We get our education from many different areas in life, not just school. Get it from TV, from our friends and family, and from books that we just read outside of school. So I always like to ask people 2 books. If you could give a recommendation for business, one business book, and then one just anything else, any other area of life, what would those recommendations be?
Wow, I didn't see that one coming. I don't read a lot of books. I wrote one once, but
oh, nice.
You won't find it anywhere, trust me. The 30 copies that were printed have well and truly been destroyed. But I think there's a book called The Big Jump.
Okay.
Now, The Big Jump, I'm assuming it's a book that you can get everywhere across the world. It was very much along the lines of the Dr. Seuss books. It wasn't a Dr. Seuss book, but it was printed by the same people. So it's got that kind of look to it. And it tells the story of a little boy who he loves puppies, and the king won't let people have puppies. And he says to the kid, "If you can jump from the bottom of my castle to the top of my castle, you can have a puppy." And so the kid goes home and thinks, how on earth am I going to be able to do that? And the dog that he's allowed to take home overnight jumps one step at a time. And so he goes, aha, no one said I couldn't do it one step at a time. So he goes back to the king, jumps step by step by step, all the way up to the top. And the king says, yeah, okay, you get a puppy. Now, all the people on the sidelines are going, hang on, I could have done that. And the king says, yeah, but you didn't. And now there's so many parallels in life with that. One step at a time is a really good thing to do. Don't look at something and say it's impossible. You can do it, particularly if you take it one step at a time. That old joke, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And also, every time you try and do something, there'll be someone standing on the sidelines going, oh, yeah, I could do that. But they don't. So that's one of my favorite books from a business perspective. And I read it first when I was about 6. So I still pull it out when I'm doing some consulting work. What would be the best book otherwise? I don't know. I should say It Is Who You Know by Neil Butler and put people out there as a challenge to see if you can find it.
Done. Check that off.
But you won't find it. I don't know. I don't read a lot of books.
It's no worries. It's no worries. These are not obligatory questions. So if you don't have an answer, we're okay with that.
Good.
I like The Big Jump. I like that story. It reminds me of, there's a lot of obviously great lessons in there, but it reminds me of that one quote. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who blah, blah, blah. I can't remember. I'm going to butcher it, but it's a good quote. I think it's called It's Not the Critic, but it's by one of the U.S. presidents. And he just says, it's not the person standing on the sidelines that matters. It's the person who's in the arena, who's out there battling it out.
Yes.
So if somebody's, giving you shit on the sidelines, don't give them 2 second thoughts. You're in there. You're the one doing it. So keep going forward.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Neil, thank you very much for jumping on the show today. I appreciated it very much, and I enjoyed our conversation. I guarantee everybody listening and watching did as well. If somebody did want to get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I guess going to the Untypical website is a good spot, untypical.com.au. You can see the spelling of it on the wall behind me. Untypical.com.au. If you're interested in the WowPod, the Words of Wisdom podcast, that's wowpod.com.au, available in all good podcast stores and probably in 1 or 2 really bad ones as well.
Awesome. So there you go, folks. Untypical.com.au, and I will also put his LinkedIn in the show notes. And if you want to check out any of his podcasts, he has Untypical Thoughts, WowPod, Two Blokes Chatting, Home Buyers Q&A, and it sounds like there's more, but I don't actually know the names. So
you'll be able to find mine Untypical. They're all listed there.
There we go. Untypical. So again, Neil, thank you very much for coming on the show. For everybody who's
guys.
here with us today on this journey, thank you guys for joining. Again, the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the next episode.
See you, folks.
Thank you guys for sticking with us on another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I hope you got a lot of value out of that guest. Again, the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Also, check out pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com if you want to get more information about what we do and what we offer. I hope you guys have a great day and keep living in integrity with yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode coming shortly.